Welcome everyone to this LinkedIn audio event. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. I'm a doctor, humanitarian, trauma-informed coach, speaker, and social entrepreneur. Now, my bio will tell you that I've helped to build 7 hospitals impacting millions of lives, that I've spoken on the global stages, that my TED and TEDx talks have reached over 1 million views. It will tell you I've been honored with several awards and that I've spoken on most of the global media. But what it won't tell you is that I drove myself into a spectacular burnout, believing that self-care was a luxury, that in fact, for years I ignored my needs, I boxed off my pain, and I allowed anger and shame to take over the wheels. When I hit rock bottom and entered what I call my valley of darkness, and as a result of the big healing journey that I went on, I discovered a profound truth that was summed up hundreds of years earlier by the Sufi mystic Rumi. And he said, "Yesterday I was clever, so I tried to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself." I absolutely now know that for those of us purpose-led, heart-centered leaders, change makers, we must change the world from the inside out. It is our personal transformation that is the key to sustainable and impactful and transformative social change. And so over the years, I've identified seven transformations that have really shaped my life and are now the cornerstone of the work that I do with many of the women leaders that I work with, really supporting them to follow the wild wisdom of their heart, to heal deeply and bring their fullest selves into the world. So we're going to do this as a 7-part series, and each one I'm going to talk about a particular transformation. And today we are focused on that shift from self-sacrificing to self-caring. Now, many of us have it obvious how you're sacrificing yourself. You might really identify as a martyr or a rescuer, or even feeling victimized by life, what's happening to you, what is imposed on you, what you have no power to change. And we all know where that leads to. That often leads to exhaustion, overwhelm, disconnection, isolation, a sense of disillusionment, and definitely a low sense of satisfaction and a low sense of well-being. For some of us, it may not be quite as obvious. It just might be in that always feeling like you're on. Difficulty switching off, having racing thoughts, or maybe trouble sleeping. So many of these changes relate to the second transformation we're going to talk about in our nervous system dysregulation and how to heal to get into a state of harmony. But for today, I really want to focus on what is self-care. In fact, let's take a pause for a second and just see what comes up for you. What's your definition? See, for me, self-care is that state of being where I feel like I'm in an open-hearted connection with myself, with the people around me, with my environment, with the divine. It means living a nourishing, nurturing, respectful way. I now live life in what I call a digestible way. That means I am no longer booking myself with back-to-back meetings, flying off with back-to-back work trips. And when I do, I arrive on the work day of the meeting and leave on the day of the meeting. I am not overextending myself anymore. And that is just one small external way of how these internal shifts have been that have created some outer changes. So today I want to focus on 3 key concepts for self-care. And honestly, I believe that these are foundational. And much of the reason as to why I have so many of my clients coming over and saying, I'm doing the yoga or I'm going to the gym and I still feel exhausted. Or, I'm starting a practice and I'm just not able to continue it. I feel guilty when I take the time out. I feel guilty if I'm not with my kids or at work, etc. And that is because for most people, you're trying to build a self-care regimen and a practice i.e., something that you're doing on no foundations, on no solid foundations. And these are the 3 key shifts I want to talk about today, because there are 3 shifts that you need to do in order to really create unshakable, non-negotiable, effective, long-term changing self-care. Ready? Here we go. The first shift is that we need to create shift and change at the identity level. What do I mean? I mean that your self-concept and your concept of yourself matter most, especially what we're talking about here. It is your belief about yourself, and more importantly, your beliefs about your needs. And these are not your conscious needs. Like consciously, you might say, yes, of course I'm important. Of course I need to look after myself. Like that's obvious, right? Most of us know the stuff up here, but actually what you really need to tap into are your hidden beliefs. These are often limiting beliefs rooted in our childhood most of the time. And what they do is they act like a glass ceiling. There is a wound that resonates a particular frequency, a particular message. And for as long as that is there, resonating that, like sending it out like a radio wave, you're not going to be able to create the shifts that you want. And so that limiting belief might be things like, I don't matter. I'm not good enough. Or I feel like a burden. I wonder if any of that resonates with you. Each belief has a nuance of itself, but essentially they leave us feeling undeserving of care, ignoring of our needs, and they end up making our needs invisible, unheard, unseen, and often unknown, especially to ourselves, let alone anyone else. And so in order to truly transform and create that unshakable self-worth, you need to heal at that identity level and create that paradigm shift in your self-concept. I'm going to give you an example. So if, for example, like me, you associate with that I'm a burden. I don't need anyone. I'm responsible. Then you most likely rarely express your most vulnerable feelings and needs. Perhaps you even have intimate relationships and people in your lives who are overtly dependent on you. Or perhaps you are profoundly self-reliant and you rarely create support structures and allow others to give you the support you really need. Now, often our beliefs impact and affect others. So in this instance, it might be that others might experience you as extremely self-reliant. I had a friend tell me a few months ago, said, you seem so together and so strong and so competent that I never know when you need help. Your friends might think you're low maintenance or you're an undemanding friend, and yet then feel burdened when you do finally express a need or a desire because they're so unused to you expressing that. If you're a woman, it might be that the men in your life don't feel that you need them, or that they may even behave like little boys, really rarely rising to the like expressed masculine that they can. This belief about yourself doesn't just affect you and your belief about your self-concept, but it's also about life. So for example, in this example, it might be that, if something goes wrong, I'm responsible for fixing it. And what ends up happening is our beliefs create actions and words and thoughts, of course, that then go to kind of corroborate this false identity that we have. So for example, we draw rigid boundaries and we kind of end up alienating and creating distance between us and people, and therefore actually blocking the help that we really want. Or we don't ask for help and we get resentful when people don't read our mind and provide it for us. Or we might overgive and overextend ourselves and get resentful because people are not giving to us in the same way that we're giving to them. Any of this sounding familiar? Now, I do want to say that each of those beliefs was has created in us gifts. So it's not all to throw out, nothing's to throw out. This is all about an embracing process, but they can give us gifts. So for example, if you are someone who's very self-reliant and afraid of being a burden and think of yourself as a burden, then you likely can really handle huge projects and deal with them with great success. Or you can accomplish a lot because of your advanced capacity to hold a large level of responsibility. Or maybe you are extremely self-reliant and independent, they're very resourceful. And maybe others in your presence feel really nurtured and cared for because of how much you give. So when I work with clients on this to really unearth these hidden beliefs, what we then talk about is, okay, now that we've identified it and seen the gifts and seen where you are acting in ways that are generating this self-fulfilling prophecy, what skills and capacities and capabilities do you need to cultivate in order to evolve beyond this false identity? So that might be things like you need to deeply connect with your own feelings and needs. You need to learn to name, to welcome, to witness. But with care, with love, with compassion, like really reassuring yourself that your needs are important, that they're not burdensome. Like creating like a really radical sense of inner safety. And then watch as your needs become clearer, as all these different parts that were before unheard, unseen, and silent start to actually express themselves. And therefore you start to connect with what you truly need and what you truly desire. So all of that will lead into a kind of a new identity, a healed identity, a true identity. You start to really realize that, wait, meeting my needs is a source of empowerment for myself and for others. That my needs are appropriate, they are reasonable, they are valid, then they are essential for my well-being. And then where you had a wound that was kind of resonating, I'm a burden, it becomes my feelings and my needs and my desires are valid and essential for my well-being. Can you see how creating that shift in your self-concept by identifying and healing those limiting beliefs, how you create that paradigm shift so that you go from that strong foundation into creating whatever self-care practice, tools, states of being that you have? It is that which will make it non-negotiable. The second shift that I want to talk about is focusing on being, not doing. So I had a client who came to me recently and said, I don't understand. I'm doing the meditation, I'm doing the yoga, I'm doing my nature walks, and I don't feel nurtured. I don't feel nourished. I still feel exhausted. And when we talked, it transpires that she is bringing her perfectionist, overachiever self to her self-care. She's so focused on the doing, but she's not noticing the being that is doing those actions, and that she is a highly critical, highly self-judgmental, mean person to herself. The self-care became on her to-do list. It became a chore. It was full of shoulds. I should do this and I should do that. So here's your invitation. Once you have tackled those hidden beliefs and created a true identity and a new self-concept, I invite you to do your self-care from a place of devotion, not discipline. It is that shift that for me meant that I started to follow my impulses. So even though my self-care is now non-negotiable and it happens for 2 hours a day, every single day, what I actually do varies. I have some kind of daily things that I always do, like my meditations and my prayer. But with regards to my physical wellness, I will often tune in and say, like, what do I need today? Sometimes it's a nature walk, sometimes it's yoga, sometimes it's cardiovascular exercise, sometimes it's my qigong. I tune into what I need and I follow what will really feel joyous and what will truly feel nourishing for me in that moment. Not from a place of should, not from a place of I said I would do this and therefore I should. There are times when having that lie-in and having that nap is absolutely what you should do, because that's what was truly self-caring. And trust me, I did do that too, plenty of times, and still do. So the invitation is to do it from a place of devotion, not discipline. And really notice your state of being when you are doing those things. I'll give you a really simple example. I had one of my clients tell me, she messaged me and said, "Oh, I'm so proud of myself. I've been drinking the tea. There's like I work with herbs and plants as part of my holistic approach, and I've been drinking the herbal teas, but I don't really feel a difference." So when I asked her about her routine and how she does it, it transpires she's sort of necking it, like on Zoom calls between meetings and on meetings. Sound familiar to anybody? And whilst you are still ingesting the herb and therefore taking this medicinal plant, I can assure you, you are getting 10% of the effect than if you were to sit down with your cup of tea, maybe set the intention, you connect to what you need in that moment. Maybe you feel like you need a little bit more calm, more grounding, or more energy. You spend a moment connecting with the plant. Maybe you can bring her or it, him to your mind. Connect with the energy of that plant. Invite that plant as an ally, as a teacher, as a healer. And really mindfully drink it. Like, what does it smell like? What does it taste like? How does it affect you as you drink it? I'm not talking about like a 17-hour tea break. I'm just saying 5 minutes, about 5 mindful minutes of drinking your tea as opposed to rushing around doing it. So focus on your state of being, not the doing, not the action itself. What is the energy that it's coming from? That is what will make a difference between your self-care being effective and not. Now, finally, the third invitation, and this is in a way my favorite, because the invitation here is to do repair care, not survival care. Now, I know you're going to know what I'm talking about here. So many of us are stuck in quick fix cycles. You know how it goes. You experience pain, you've got a shoulder pain or a neck pain, you go and have a one-off massage, you have a temporary relief, only to next week have the same neck pain again. You're exhausted, you've been working too much, you have a long weekend away, you feel great when you come back, one day later, feeling knackered again. Survival care is like putting the plasters on. You're like patching things up, you're trying to help the wheels not fall off. Whereas repair care is when we actually go to address the root cause of our discomfort, of our dis-ease. As a doctor, I can't tell you how disappointed I have been with Western medicine's tendency to focus on symptom control instead of actual healing, root cause healing. For me, true healing encompasses physical, mental, emotional, as well as spiritual well-being. It's about restoring health and vitality, whatever that means for you. And one thing that really struck me about my journey for healing burnout was quite how much burnout was the tip of the iceberg, and underneath it was a mountain of grief and unresolved trauma. Chronic stress, traumatic stress, burnout, and trauma all have a very similar signature, which is really rooted in the nervous system dysregulation. And next week, I'm going to be talking about it. That is integral to the second transformation. So please do tune in for that. So this third and final invitation is to do the deep work, to do the restorative work, do the root cause work. That's what's going to support you to create long-lasting shifts in your health and in your wellness. So in closing, today we discussed 3 foundational concepts to shift your self-care paradigm so that you can feel energized, balanced, fulfilled, purposeful, without sacrificing your health, your happiness. We talked about identifying and healing limiting beliefs so that you can upgrade your self-concept and make your self-care non-negotiable. We talked about focusing on being rather than doing so you can focus your approach to self-care from a place of devotion, not discipline. And finally, we talked about repair care so you can move away from quick fixes to engage in true healing.